Tonight we're going to be talking about solar for home and business in two parts, energy efficiency first, and then we have a local professional to talk about the basics of solar. So first, a little bit about SECRES. We are a nonprofit staffed by all volunteers with the mission of educating the public on renewable energy and energy efficiency. We are a local chapter of a statewide organization, which is the Colorado Renewable Energy Society, which has a brand new website at cres-energy.org, as you see on the slide here. And you can reach us through the chapter page of the CRES main website. As we kick off the briefing tonight, you will have an opportunity to ask questions. What I would request is that you post your questions in writing through the question section or the chat section, and as we finish each of the two briefings, we'll answer your questions. So a little bit about my background. I am a retired RESNET home energy rater, Building Performance Institute professional building energy analyst. I also did WaterSense, EPA WaterSense new home inspections, and also Energy Star new home inspections. What three areas I'm going to talk to you about tonight are getting into, first of all, a little bit of building science. We're going to talk about the basics of home energy efficiency, and then look at some actual results from energy audits that I've done in the past. And then my favorite section, we're going to bust some myths. So let's just jump right into this. I think it's fairly well known about the financial benefits of increasing the efficiency of your building, your home, or your business. One early but fairly extensive Department of Energy study showed about a 33% decrease in heating bills after weatherization. But what might be lesser well known is the benefits to comfort and health in your home. And also for those of you that are concerned about human-caused global climate change, interesting statistic is that even just a 10% increase in efficiency eliminates about 1,400 pounds of emitted carbon dioxide into the atmosphere. But for the purpose of tonight's briefing, one of the more important aspects is improving the efficiency of your home or business is always the first step before you consider adding renewable energy such as solar. The less energy that you're using through efficiency measures, the smaller the system that you have to install and the less expensive it will be. So in the typical house, where does all your energy go? So this is information from the U.S. Energy Information Agency. It's about 2 years old. And this is data for across the entire United States. So the largest percentage goes to space heating, about 43%. You can see a fairly large chunk down there in the bottom in orange for water heat. And then that large blue section, 21%, is the all other. And that all other includes appliances and plug loads. And that's a category that's growing fairly rapidly as people add many consumer electronics into their household. So the first of a handful of very important points I'd like you to walk away with tonight is this. You cannot consider improving the efficiency of your building in isolation without understanding the interrelationship between efficiency, health, comfort, and safety. It is possible to improve in one area and inadvertently cause a problem in another area. And let me just give you one very common example. The recommendation is always to remove or reduce air leakage in a house, make your house or your building as tight as possible. But you can do that beyond a threshold point where if you don't add mechanical ventilation, you increase the risk of mold, mildew, and trapping off-gassing and moisture inside the house. So when you're considering improving the efficiency of your building, you have to look at health, comfort, and safety along with that. Second key point, do not think just about insulation. So in other words, put aside all of those commercials you've seen in the newspaper, on TV, on the radio, and think beyond just insulation to the concept of the thermal boundary. The thermal boundary is the shell around the conditioned portion of your building, of your living space or workspace. And there are two absolutely fundamental critical requirements that define a thermal boundary. It must be air sealed and it must be insulated. And I want to make sure that I draw a distinction between air sealing and vapor sealing. An air barrier will allow water vapor to breathe, to pass through, but it will block the bulk movement of air through the shell. A vapor barrier, by contrast, blocks both air and water vapor. And we'll be talking about where you would use those different types of barriers, but in some cases, it can be rather detrimental to use a vapor barrier where you really need an air barrier. And also, in terms of thinking about the thermal boundary, both air sealed and insulated, interesting to point out that the typical attic in an average American house actually loses significantly more energy through air leaks than through under insulation. So now let's take a look at what some of these common problems are. And these are photos from a variety of energy audits that I've done over the years. So the first area is attics. And the place to start before you even think about insulation is air sealing and looking for penetrations through the sides and particularly through the floor of the attic, which is the ceiling of the uppermost floor of the house. And I'm just going to talk houses here, but these same concepts obviously apply to any building, including small businesses. So here are some common examples. In the upper left, this is called a knee wall, and the definition of a knee wall is a vertical wall in the attic, which has attic, namely outdoor space, on one side and conditioned indoor space on the other. It's only been recently with the adoption of the current, actually 2 energy codes ago, but still fairly recent, that code requires the knee walls to be completely air sealed on, think of it as a box on all 6 sides, front, back, top, bottom, left, right. Was not required in previous years, so you'll find most houses in this area that have knee walls, they are exposed. But this would require, it's insulated, but air can still pass through it. So this would require an air barrier type of cover over top of it. Say oriented strand board or a product called Thermoply, just some type of air barrier. Here's down in the lower left, a penetration of a furnace flue. that goes down through a mechanical chase and has no air barrier blocking the flow of cold attic air in the winter to move down into the rest of the house. And the final picture is one of an attic hatch. This is a common source of air leakage. This is a thermal image. The blue is cold. This is a picture taken in the winter. And you can see the infiltration of cold air around that rim. One easy fix, well, let me start with the best solution. If you don't have to get up into the attic, or you only have to get up on very rare occasions for some type of maintenance, the best solution is just to run a bead of caulk around that door and just seal it in place. If you want to be able to get in and out of the attic, then you can put weather stripping on the lip, and have the hatch actually sitting down onto that weather stripping. So that's the attic. Let's take a look at crawl spaces. Through most of the 20th century till about the, I don't know, late 70s or so, the conventional wisdom was to ventilate a crawl space. In other words, define the thermal boundary as the roof of the crawl space, which is the lowest floor in the house. What that meant is that the crawl space was outside space, and running plumbing and drains and electrical and other mechanicals through the crawl space put all of those mechanicals into outside space, which then can lead to frozen pipes and other issues, because it's almost impossible to completely air seal a floor. So it led to a lot of air leakage and infiltration. The unanimous recommendation today in the building science community is to bring the crawl space inside the thermal boundary, define the thermal boundary as the foundation walls of the crawl space, meaning to insulate those, and bring the crawl space itself inside. And that eliminates the problem with trying to completely air seal the floor above a crawl space with all of the pipes and wires and penetrations that go through that. Now, when you do that, though, you still have to circulate a little bit of air through the crawl space, and it's absolutely critical to control moisture. 6 to 10 mil polyethylene plastic sheet has to cover 100% of the dirt. If you have a dirt floor in the crawl space, should be taped at the walls to stop moisture from evaporating into the crawl space. And outside of the house, you want to run bulk water. In other words, your gutters and your drains, you want to run bulk water away from the house 8 to 10 feet, and make sure that you have a 5-degree slope away from the house for about 10 feet to keep moisture from working its way into the crawl space. Next common area, just miscellaneous air infiltration, air leakage. So again, this is only critical at the thermal boundary. So a recessed light, let's say between the first and the second floor, you don't care about air sealing that, because it's not, one side of that is not exposed to outside air. But a recessed light on the uppermost floor, where there is attic above, which is outside space, is a notorious air leakage problem. Here is in the lower right corner, a thermal image of a typical can light, recessed light with attic above. And there is a very inexpensive and easy DIY fix for this, and does not require the can to be removed from the framing. It can all be done from inside the house. You don't have to go up in the attic. And that is the purchase of a airtight LED kit from Lowe's or Home Depot. What happens is they're only about $16 a piece now. It'll pay for itself in one heating season. The light bulb comes out. The inner shroud, which is held in place with usually 3 springs, comes out. and the kit goes in, and the kit has a built-in LED light, and it also has a gasketed cover to stop the leakage of air from the attic. This is a wall socket on an outside wall, another source of common source of leakage. And you can buy rubber gaskets that you take the cover plate off. You can put the rubber gasket on, put the cover plate back on. If you want to go the extra mile, the gap between the drywall and the inner box, after you take the cover plate off, you can run a thin bead of caulk around that, and while the caulk is wet, put in your rubber gasket, screw the plate back on. Fans, ceiling fans in bathrooms in the uppermost floor, another common source of leakage. In almost all cases, this is a removable cover. I'm looking at the upper left picture here. Removable cover, you can drop that down, run a bead of caulk between the drywall and the box, the electrical box of the fan, and let that cure, put the cover back on, and you're back in business. One common leakage area, which I didn't include a picture for, but it's the sill plates and the bottom plates, which are the horizontal framing that sits on top of the concrete foundation wall. So either in your crawl space or in your basement. Nowadays it's a code requirement to have those sealed, but in a lot of earlier homes, not done at all. But that's easily remedied if you don't have a finished basement, with a can of spray foam or a tube of caulk, and just putting a bead between the concrete foundation and that sill plate, and then also between the bottom plate, and also between the bottom plate and the first piece of vertical wood, the sill, you can run a bead of caulk and air seal there. Hidden problems are notorious and particularly difficult for an average homeowner to detect. And if you can't detect it, it's hard to correct it. But here are some examples. This is upper left corner photo, thermal image of a bathroom wall in the wintertime. This was a gentleman that was having frozen pipes, but frozen pipes down in the basement. But this is the second floor bathroom. And as I went along with the thermal camera, each stud cavity was red, meaning warm, red, 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 blue. And what was happening here was below these lights were a sink and a plumbing vent stack, a plumbing vent pipe was going up through the outer wall and penetrating into the attic, and the gap between the pipe and the framing was not caulked or spray foamed. And so frigid winter attic air was pouring down through that gap into the wall cavity, and then down further, and freezing pipes in the house. Lower left picture. This is a typical finding in our area where we have very high winds, where if there are no cardboard or plastic baffles in the attic at the soffit vents. So the soffit vent is where a roof overhangs and there's a vent underneath. But inside the attic, there should be a baffle that forces the air coming in through the vent up and over the insulation. If those are not in place, then high wind will actually push the insulation away from the edge of the house. And I've seen, it's called wind washing. I've seen wind washing 3 to 4 feet in length from the edge of the house. And so that this whole area then is uninsulated. Lower right-hand corner, this is a dropped chase inside, like a decorative chase over kitchen cabinets in a single-story house, let's say. But this is a drop chase where rather than covering this in the attic with a proper air barrier like oriented strand board or plywood, just a piece of fiberglass insulation was put over this opening, and then the blown-in insulation was blown over top of the fiberglass. But over time, the weight of the insulation just collapsed the fiberglass, and so now all of this is uninsulated inside wall. Let's talk furnaces for a minute. You won't find many, but they still exist, and they really, really are cost-effective and high return on investment to replace, which is the 65% efficient furnace. And you can tell these by the lower opening with a constant, steady, 24/7, 365-day per year pilot light burning. And the payback time to replace this with a modern furnace is actually fairly short, 3 to 5 years. You will save that much in energy. The most common by far is in the center here, 80% efficient, atmospherically vented furnace, which emits hot flue gases, so it requires a double or triple wall flue pipe to go outside the house. Does not have a standing pilot light, has a spark ignition. But again, the efficiency is only 80%. What you're going to find most people putting in today or putting in as a replacement when the original furnace dies is the 92 to 98% efficient condensing furnace, which you not only have the primary heat from the flame, but then you also condense the heat energy out of the flue gases, put that heat energy into the house, and so then only cooler gases can go out through a plastic pipe. The other advantage of these is you greatly reduce the possibility of carbon monoxide poisoning because they are sealed combustion. This plastic pipe is an inlet from the outside for combustion air, and this one is the exhaust. The 80% and the 65% efficient furnaces draw combustion air from inside the house, and they can actually depressurize the house and exacerbate leakage by drawing the combustion air from inside the house. So these are approximately 95% efficient. They go up to 98%. And they also have much higher efficiency electric motors called electronically commutated motors, ECM motors, in the modern furnaces. Let's talk cooling for a little bit. We are blessed with, in our climate, of having very relatively few cooling days, and also in the summer, nighttime with low humidity and low temperatures. So it's very hard to make an economic argument for investing a lot of money into a highly efficient air conditioning for so few cooling days. That's not to say that there won't be times where you need an air conditioner in a house, but the first step should always be to try to stop the source of the excess heat, which is usually solar heating coming into the house. So more cost effective than a larger and more expensive air conditioner is to look into things like thermal shades, or there's actually products called solar screens that provide very good visibility, but block a lot of the solar heat energy, the infrared energy coming into the house. Simply changing incandescent light bulbs to LED light bulbs eliminates a lot of heat in the house. But if you've done all that and you still need mechanical cooling, you have some options that work well in our climate that are more cost effective than air conditioners, and that's a whole house fan, which should sit up in the attic, and also evaporative coolers work very well the lower the humidity. I mentioned earlier that appliance and plug loads are rising because of consumer electronics, but they're also dropping because of the Energy Star program, and appliances like refrigerators and dishwashers are actually becoming more efficient. But in a typical U.S. house, the average electrical consumption per month is about 920 kilowatt hours. A moderately efficient family can get that down to 800 kilowatt hours per month. And if you're really focused, you can drop that all the way down to 300 to 400. But one area that you really have to attack are these plug loads and appliances. And the best place to start is with Energy Star rated appliances. Refrigerators were notorious, and they were the first product to be in the Energy Star program. So in the early 1990s, typical refrigerator about 1,200 kilowatt hours per year. That average today is, this slide's a couple years old, the average today is actually lower than 550. It's getting down around 500. And you can find refrigerators, good size refrigerators, down in the 350 kilowatt hour per year range. Those of us in the energy rater business used to like to apply the almond and avocado rule. If your refrigerator is almond color or avocado color, probably time to look at a replacement, because those were the colors that were popular in the 1980s, and you're probably looking at about a 1,400 kilowatt hour per year refrigerator. Even if it's running, you will save money by replacing it with a brand new Energy Star model, pay for itself in about 3 or 4 years. Phantom loads. Phantom load is when the device switch says off, but it's still drawing electricity in the background. One of the most notorious examples I used to like to show customers were Comcast or DirecTV boxes. The switch said off, but in order to be ready on, or in the case of DirecTV, to track satellites, in the background they were still drawing what is a fairly substantial 22 to 25 watts of energy, and that is running 24 hours a day. So what's the best thing to do? If you can live with a slightly longer warm-up time for your TV, just put these on a power strip with a switch, and when you're done for the night, turn it off. Kill the power to the box. Let's talk electric vehicles just for a second, as those are becoming much more popular. What will that do to your plug loads? Let's take an example of an 8,000 miles of home charging for the cost of a year, and looking at a typical efficiency electric vehicle of 3.5 miles per kilowatt hour. You're going to consume about 190 kilowatt hours, or an additional $21 per month on average to charge that electric vehicle. So far cheaper than gasoline, but still comes as a shock to a lot of people when they get that first energy bill after buying an electric vehicle. Lighting, the absolute easiest, fastest, and most significant way that you can start to reduce your electric energy consumption is by removing every Edison light bulb, incandescent light bulb from your house, and replace it with an LED equivalent. You don't have to go berserk like I did. In our house, we have also put LED bulbs into the refrigerator and the microwave and the oven. But you can see the substantial savings, because not only do they consume far less energy, 9 watts for the equivalent light from a 60-watt incandescent, but they also last so much longer that you're replacing light bulbs far less, if at all, over the life of a house. Do not recommend compact fluorescent anymore. That was a nice stepping stone to LEDs, but LEDs have become so cheap, you don't have the flicker, You don't have the issue with mercury and have to recycle the bulbs. Compact fluorescents, they serve their job well, but I would recommend just going straight to LEDs at this point. Let's bust some myths. Here's one of my favorites from a few years ago. I heard this driving down the road on the radio. Replace your windows and save, I believe they said, to keep from getting a lawsuit, I believe they said up to 40% on your heating bills. Well, let's take a look at the building science behind that. If you had, even in the absolute worst case, 80-year-old single pane windows with warped frames, the total heat loss, if you were to computer model the energy loss in this house, the total heat loss through the windows would only get up to maybe 30%. Typical heat loss through windows is about 12 to 15%. So if you took out every window and replaced it with insulated wall, you couldn't even come close to 40% savings on your heating bill, because the loss component is only 12 to 15% for windows. The R value, if you convert the window statistics to R values, or their performance to R value, an uncoated double pane window is an R of 2.2. But believe it or not, if you were to upgrade to an Energy Star window for the purpose of saving energy, you're only going up to an R 3.3. So what does all of this mean? What it means is when I would model return on investment for home and business owners, the payback time for a window replacement is north of 50 years. Now, there will be times that you have to replace them because the wood frames like to crack in our climate. So if there's a security issue or the windows are rotting out, then you have to change them. But if you're changing them just to save energy, it doesn't really pay. Second myth, saving energy by turning down the thermostat on the house and cranking up that gas fireplace. Okay, so let's take a look at the numbers. Common furnace, as we talked about, 80% efficient. Maybe you have a condensing furnace that you're in the 90 to 98% range. The typical gas fireplace, the most common, are only 15% efficient. If you went, and that's what most builders put in for gas fireplaces. If you forced your builder to put in a fireplace with a spark ignition, then maybe you can get up to 35% efficient. And a conventional wood fireplace can actually be negative efficient. You can actually pull more heat out of the house than you're putting in. So what does that mean? You're actually spending more on gas by turning up the gas fireplace rather than leaving the fireplace off and turning up the furnace by a degree or two. And don't forget to turn off those constant pilot lights in your fireplaces. I could tell just by looking at utility bills before I showed up at a house whether they had a gas fireplace with a steady pilot light. Believe it or not, that little pilot light puts out a lot of heat that you're now paying your air conditioner to get rid of in the summer. And it will burn enough gas that it's costing you somewhere between $12 and $20 per month in wasted energy, wasted natural gas. So turn them off and then turn it back on in the winter. Next myth. How many times have you heard, we start in the attic when adding new insulation? Well, here's the reality. If the house was built after, let's say, the late 1970s, you have a nominal amount of maybe R 20 to 23 in the attic. If that's the case, then an uninsulated basement where the foundation walls are uninsulated will actually waste up to 5 times more energy than an under-insulated attic. If you had no insulation in the attic, then of course this wouldn't be true. But for the most typical houses in this area, your money, your dollar goes a lot further by starting in an uninsulated basement than it would be by adding more insulation in the attic. Next myth: add more insulation and especially in the attic to stop air leaks. Well, insulation is not an air barrier. That's a foot stomper. Let me rephrase that. Your fibrous insulation, fiberglass and cellulose, are not air barriers. They are insulators, but without an air barrier, cold air in the winter will still move right through that insulation. Let me differentiate that from rigid foam and spray foams, which are air barriers. So the first place to start, as we mentioned before, in an attic is with air leakage, not with insulation. Air leakage first, then insulate, and then don't walk up there and compress the insulation and take R value away from it. A lot of you may have heard this one, that you don't want to air seal and make a house too tight. A house or a building needs to breathe. And a lot of this came about in the 90s because of sick building syndrome, primarily office buildings. But that's absolutely false statement, because you can never make a building too tight, but you can underventilate it. So ideally, you want to make it tight, ventilate right. You want to get a building as tight as possible and then introduce the correct amount of controlled, clean ventilation air, outside air. By air sealing the house very tight and controlling where your ventilation air comes from, you're not relying on leaks to ventilate your house. And those leaks could be through dirty, dusty attics, bringing pollen and fiberglass into your house, or dirty, dusty crawl spaces. So you make the house as tight as possible, and then you control the amount and the type of ventilation air that then properly ventilates the house to control moisture and mildew. And let's not forget water. This is from an actual energy audit of a Colorado Springs utilities customer, I believe either in Glen Eagle or Briargate. So typical, 3,000 square foot, two-story in a basement house on a quarter-acre lot. The typical Colorado Springs modern house built since the late 1980s. So look at this. Gas for heating the house, $814 a year they were paying. Lights and appliances, fairly large, larger than normal, $781. But look at the next category, $485 a year for irrigation. Now, that's not the indoor water, that is just the irrigation. And an auditor is able to split out the irrigation water from the indoor water just by studying the utility bills. So $238 a year for bathing, washing, and so on, but $485 a year for irrigation. So what that means is you could hire a professional landscaper to xeriscape, say, most to all of the front yard and 80% of the backyard, and still break even in about 2 to 3 years, just on water costs. And not to mention, we live in high desert, and it's a sin to be trying to keep Kentucky bluegrass green in high desert drought conditions. Okay, so what are the advantages of hiring a professional auditor versus trying to make all of these improvements yourself? Well, you could spend a lot of money and time just shotgunning all of these different tips that we've talked about, and there's still many more that I haven't talked about. But for roughly $375, you can get a professional audit, which includes a substantial amount of diagnostic testing. A professional audit will take about 3 to 4 hours. Diagnostic testing, thermal imaging, whole house air leakage testing, duct leakage testing. And the beauty of this is that the audit report will show you not only where your energy is being wasted, but perform return on investment calculations for you, so you know where the low-hanging fruit is. And that's not always obvious. People always want to jump immediately onto windows and installation, whereas the highest return on investment by far, by a factor of 5 or 6, may be 2 cans of spray foam from Home Depot because the attic leaks like a sieve. I do recommend a professional audit. They will typically pay for themselves. My average findings were about $500 to $800 per year in savings. Sometimes in older houses, they went as high as $1,200 a year if there was an old style furnace in there. So if you can pay for the cost of the energy audit in a couple of heating seasons, maybe even one heating season, depending on how old your house is. So, in conclusion, the return on investment is not always obvious, especially when you have a building with a lot of hidden problems that can only be detected through diagnostic testing. And again, that key point is you cannot focus just on efficiency without also considering any potential unintended consequences on safety and comfort when you're performing upgrades. That's another great reason to have a professional energy auditor come in and give recommendations, because they will talk about all of those categories together and how they interact and interrelate. So with that, I'm going to come back and take a look at questions before we turn it over to our next speaker. And let's see. High efficiency wood burning stove, is there such a thing? There are higher efficiency wood stoves, and here is the place to go. And this is what we did when we were building our house. You can go online and you can search for what's called the EPA Phase 2 wood stove list. Now, the EPA has a rank order of the more efficient wood stoves by make and model. Their primary concern is the more efficient a wood stove is, the fewer particulates it puts out in the air. But that exact same list also gives the homeowner a wood stove that puts out more heat per cord of wood, more BTUs per cord of wood than others. And so that list, they break down into 3 categories: catalytic wood stoves, non-catalytic, and pellet stoves. And it's a fantastic list to find the most efficient units out there from an independent source that's not making any money off the sale. So in other words, don't believe manufacturer claims because they are not held to any standard in the US for wood stoves. And but go to the EPA list. As a corollary, let me also say that in the United States, there is no Energy Star rating for gas fireplaces, which I think is why a lot of people in the public don't realize how inefficient the unit that their builder put in really is. However, the Canadian Energy Star program does rate gas fireplaces. And in North America, most fireplaces are sold across the border. So you can actually go to the Canadian site and look up the efficiency. If you're thinking about putting in either an insert or a gas fireplace from scratch, you can go to the Canadian Energy Star website and find some ratings. And that was, let me see, just check the chat section here. Okay, so that was the only question. Going to turn it over here to our next speaker, Phil Brodhagen, who is...
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Oh, okay.
Okay, I'm going to turn it over. Phil Brodhagen is the owner of Peakview Solar, one of the local family-owned solar companies in town, and is going to talk about the basics of putting solar on your home or business. And you should have control of the screen now, Phil.
Okay, hopefully the slides are up.
They are.
Okay, this is Solar 101. This is the basics. We'll go through this, and if you have any questions, feel free to type them in the little chat box there. Introduction, as you mentioned, I'm Phil Brodhagen. My company is for commercial and residential solar. I'm NAPCEP certified. That's something you can look up, North American Board of Certified Energy Professionals. And I'm both for installation and sales. My residential company is Peakview Solar. That's my phone number, and we're off of Fillmore. So one of the things, I guess, well, I had to change these slides a little bit so everything just pops up at once. Why go solar? And it says hedge against rate increases. I can't really say hedge. That's probably not really a hedging bet because rates do go up. But if you purchase all your energy all at once, then you never have a price increase, which is basically what you do when you purchase solar. It does reduce your dependency on the utilities, but in many cases, since these systems are grid tied, they're still relying on them being there. It does help out the utilities. They don't have to build as many new power plants, however they're powered. There is a return on investment, usually 8 to 12 years, depending on the efficiency of your roof. Because if you're pointing south or if you're pointing west, different efficiencies occur. And some people do it just to lower their monthly bill. They want to drop it by $50 a month, $100 a month. And again, there's a return on that investment too, same time period. Others do it for environmental reasons. And then we're seeing more and more of this where there's situations where people would like to have a battery backup, and it's usually for specific loads in the house. People on wells would like them always to be available should the power go out. In case of there's people with certain health conditions, they have to make sure certain things are always running, and these systems will take care of that. What are the components? Here we have is typical installation. Up here, you see this is the panels, and we put them up as high on the roof as we can because you see over here you can get shading, and we want to avoid that because it reduces the efficiency. And over here is all the little components. Some of these are already on the house, and let me zoom in on those. Not a great picture, but this is the meter that was originally on the house, as well as this is their main panel. It's got all the breakers in it. The pieces that the solar is going to introduce is going to be an inverter. This is going to change the energy coming out of the panels from DC to AC electricity. And then this meter is an additional meter, which is required by most of the utilities. Not all of them, but most of them. They want to count and see how much energy you're producing, and it basically gives them a credit. And then there is this disconnect. And every utility wants to be able to have this feature of disconnecting the system should they need to work on, say, a transformer nearby. These things are backfeeding onto the grid since it's connected to the grid. And it should the lineman touch anything and it's being backfed, the voltage gets cranked up pretty bad right at a transformer around 7,500 volts. So it would really ruin the guy's day. So that's required. No way getting around that. How to go solar? Do it yourself. There is a lot of paperwork we do. I do look at all the permits being pulled every year, and typically around 12, maybe 15 people actually attempt to do this themselves. We occasionally get a call from people that are halfway through it and want to get help. Unfortunately, at that point, we can't, insurance reasons. And it does take a lot of research. Some people really know their stuff when they come and chat with us, and others just want to have that bill go down or disappear. And then there's solar contractors. You want to get multiple quotes. You want to make sure you're comparing apples to apples. And what do I mean by that? The system size has to be the same. You want to make sure that it's being designed the same. That way you can tell if these things are who's giving you a better deal, as well as who's giving you the best efficiency. There's local versus national. Yeah, there's national chains out there. Who's to say they'll be here in 10 years? But the local guys, yeah, we survived by this. Is the installer NatCep certified? Again, it's like getting an electrician who has no, he's not a master electrician. He's not a residential wireman. He's your neighbor that says, I can do electricity. Yeah, we all know how that goes. Yeah, if you want to check out the NatCep website, you can actually check and see if the guy installing your system is actually certified. Again, always ask for references. A lot of people don't. We suggest you do. The number of installs of the system of the type you're considering. If it's their first time, you probably want to beware. I was there. In fact, the picture you're looking at was one of my earlier ones. And occasionally, people want to do business with you. That's how people get started. So they're not all bad. Number of years in businesses, again, the more the better, the more they've been around, obviously, because they've run into all kinds of situations. But, can't put down the new guys. They're always coming about. And then, yeah, insured and licensed in the local jurisdiction as a renewable energy provider. You do, regardless if they're new or old, you want to make sure that they have insurance for anything that goes wrong and that they are licensed to actually do the install. Every install needs to be permitted, even if you're doing it off grid. You have a cabin out in the woods, you're going to have a system put in. It's a dangerous thing to do. You can get electrocuted, so you do want to have people licensed, and you do want to have it permitted so you know that you got quality work and that it's inspected. Types of systems. Well, we've got, there's a standard. This is just like everyday majority that's installed. They're grid tied. And that means that just like that setup I showed you back here, this system is grid tied, which means during the day, there's nobody home. It's producing more energy than is needed. And it's actually going back on the grid and probably going to your neighbor's house. But the meter here has been changed to what they call as a net meter, which means when the energy is going out, they're counting, the utility company is counting how many kilowatt hours you're putting out on the grid, and they're going to give you back the same number without a charge. So you don't, so your bill is basically correct. And everyone will have, everyone requires to be net metered. And I mentioned this with protected loads, batteries, seeing more people working in this area. Off grid, you're going to want to do batteries and a generator. Some people with grid connected systems actually do add a generator to it. Then there's off grid, which is completely self-generating. Everything you use in the thing is generated by your solar. The new thing coming up with rate changes that are occurring, time of use is going to be happening probably 2-3 years, maybe longer, maybe sooner. This is where it's at 4 o'clock, your rate goes up by 10-20 cents, and it stays that way until about 10 o'clock at night, and then they reduce your rate back. Actually, you can, in some cases, I think Colorado Springs Utilities has a test version of it where you can opt into it and have your changed if you don't use much electricity, especially during those hours. And then we got EV charging, which is becoming bigger and bigger. And this is where the solar is going in and can be redirected straight into your electric vehicle. And it does what is called a solar boost. So you have a limited number of amperage that you're allowed to shove into your car on time. That's kind of like the level 1, level 2, level 3 charging. And they're able to actually boost that so that you're actually like at a level 2.4, for lack of a better way. So they're putting a little more energy into the car. And while obviously this is during the day when the sun is out, when the solar's running, instead of just shoving it off onto the grid, you can put it back into your car. It's more efficient to do it that way because it's DC to DC as opposed to when you're charging off the grid, it's going from AC to DC. So there's a loss there in that conversion. And more people are asking for these whole home backups. It's pretty much the same setup, extra pieces of equipment to disengage the house off of the grid when the grid goes down. And therefore the batteries would then take care of the house. Then there's combinations of everything that I just mentioned. Whole house with self-consumption where you have the backup available, and during those peak charge hours of time of use, you're going to get self-consumption. Self-consumption is where all that energy is stored in a battery and that would have been on the grid. And if you top off the batteries, then it does spill out on the grid. But during those high charge hours, we actually can tell the inverter, take from the battery and not pull from the grid until there's no more battery, or until it gets to a level where you want it like 40% reserved for if the power goes out. So you can be bringing your bill down with self-consumption and still taking care of your home. And now the inverters coming out today, they do it all. You can actually have them do whole home backup, self-consumption, and EV charging all in one unit, which is, I guess, where it needs to be. And we're at that point with them. Incentives. Well, the residential federal tax credit. So if you have a tax liability, I mean, you have to pay something, which I guess you're actually paying it all the time because every paycheck they take out the taxes, and that is a payment. You can get a chunk of that back, which is 26% of the cost of the system this year. Next year it drops down to 20%, and then in 2022 it's gone. Right now there is a lot of industry manufacturers and whatnot. They're lobbying right now to have that tax credit extended. They want to bring it back up to 30%, and they want to actually add the batteries too. So we'll see. That probably won't happen till next year. Local utilities. If you're in Black Hills territory, they have what's called a PBI, which is a performance-based incentive. They calculate how much the system's going to produce each month, and they're going to give people a credit. And it's like 3.6 cents per kilowatt hour right now. And believe it or not, some of the larger systems, people are going to get like, I don't know, 3,500 back over 10 years. It's not right away. They pay a little bit every time. And then there's what I consider it a grant. Colorado Springs Utilities has a cash incentive. It's not very big. Every system, you could get $500-600 back, and they basically give you that check once the system is functional. Mountain View Electric doesn't have anything. IREA and any of the co-ops, they do not have any type of incentive programs, and there isn't anything at the state level either. And then, okay, how much solar do I need? For those people that have just got into a house and they do not have any utility bills, but they want to put in solar, we get requests for this daily. The square footage is indicated. It's a poor option because we don't really know how you're going to use the home, but both CSU and Excel and Black Hills, actually, they all have a little sheet for their territory that'll say, based on this amount of square footage, we will allow up to this amount. And they do have the final say. If you're in Mountain View territory, and you're in a very rural area where there's only one house on the street, you might find out that they're not going to allow you to even have any solar. And they can do that. And then the better option, obviously, is the monthly bill amount. But, some places like Black Hills has a bunch of all kinds of taxes added to it. So that makes the amount too high. A better option is monthly usage. So we know over the last 12 months how much you used each month, and we can tailor the system to create that much energy in that same time frame. That's an important thing, I guess, that isn't really ground in enough, is where these systems are designed to produce a specific amount within a range. My company, we actually guarantee that production, not just in the first year, but in the first 10 years. The thing that really needs to be driven home is that it is a specific amount. If you get a hot tub after you get the solar, it's not going to cover that bill. That's going to be a very large amount of energy. Or you're going to get an electric vehicle. It's not going to do that. It's just not magic. It doesn't automatically cover everything you want. If you're going to do those things in the future, let your installer know so that they can design a system that can be added to very simply instead of having to kludge it together at a later date. As I mentioned, the full 12 months of usage is best. We recommend about 105 to 110% of your current usage. This is based on statistics from the utility companies where they see what happens when people have solar installed. A lot of times there are increases that people, you get a little more lazy. I know I do. I know my home is powered by the sun, and I leave lights on. I guess I have a large number of, what do they call those, phantom loads that Jim was talking about. Yeah, it just adds to the bill, but my solar takes care of that. Regulatory items. The utility companies are going to require that you have liability insurance. There's $300K for residential, which is a 10 kilowatt or smaller. Some of them are from $600,000 to $1 million of liability insurance if you're over 10 kilowatts. And it's in their paperwork. You don't have it, they don't give you access. Equipment, all equipment must be UL stamped. It must have some type of listing to certify that it's safe. This is in the electric code, which we have to abide by. HOA your homeowners association, they cannot deny you having solar. But they can ask you to try to make it a little more aesthetically pleasing. Now, we're already designing, my company already designed systems that are a little more aesthetically pleasing. If you look at this picture here on the left, you'll notice that there's a front skirt. Although the panels actually look kind of bluish, they're actually black. It's just this particular angle. If you were just on the roof and looking down on them, you'd see that they were all black. So yeah, they can ask you to make sure that you have those things. If you're gonna, some companies are still installing the old black, the blue with a silver frame and a white background. It kind of looks like a checkerboard. They could ask you to change those, but they can't add a significant cost. The location of the disconnect must be outside of the house and accessible by the utility. So in this particular picture, if we went to put it on the back side of the house over here, behind the gate, they would say no, because they can't get to it. And utilities, oops, boy, just touchy little mouse. And utilities have requirements. Every one of them has something a little different, so I'm not going to go into all of them because there's quite a few utility companies around here. But the certified installer is going to know what all these are. Here we have accessories or options, rackless or micro rail systems, which is what you just saw here. You notice there's no railing sticking out on either side. It's a micro rail. It's got a front skirt. It's very clean looking. Oops. There's bird and critter barriers. If they have if they're higher off the roof, and you're in an area where there's a lot of birds or have squirrels, you're going to want some kind of critter barrier around it. That's usually another add-on. BOB instead of BOW. Well, black on black. That's I've mentioned that the panels that we're installing have a black frame, a black back sheet, and a black cell, as opposed to the old versions, which were blue on white, basically. Storage is another option you can add to your system. And monitoring, which is kind of what's on the right-hand side. You notice this is a typical monitoring for many of the systems we install. You see down at the very bottom, it's actually got, this one has a battery. Shows you the battery discharge. This is your system production. And the red is when you're consuming and there's no production. Oops, did it again. Okay. And these are kind of like Jim's gotchas, breaking those myth busters. The average home increases by about 10% when they go solar. This is statistics that CSU has put together over the last 10 years. Your EV, this one really was interesting. Usage increases by over 30% when you purchase an EV. Now, typically, so if you're driving the EV every day and you're charging it, it adds up, and you end up having to put in, as you can see, typical EV, just the EV is about a 3.5 kilowatt system of extra solar to cover the bill, basically, to charge the vehicle. In most cases, you're limited to only 120% of your last 12-month usage, or 10 kilowatts. So in CSU territory, you have, say, 10,000 kilowatt hours you used last year. They're only going to allow you to go up to 12,000 a system, or if that system ends up being larger than 10 kilowatts, they're going to say you can only have a 10 kilowatt system. So it's 120% or 10 kilowatts, whichever is less. Mountain View Electric does a little different. Black Hills is more lenient. They only follow the 120 rule, not the 10 kilowatt. So depending on where you're at, it's all a little different. And some utilities will limit the size of your system even further, which is Mountain View Electric. They will turn around and say, you need 10, but you can only have 5. And they have their reasons for that. They're protecting their grid in regards to backfeeding when you're overproducing. And basically about over 1,600 homes go solar in El Paso County. I know this because I watch all the permits that are pulled every year that are solar related. And this little piece, this is something I just threw in recently. This is to show you what the panels can look like. So you can have in this lower right, lower left, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Okay, these are 60 cell. This is a standard 60 cell. This is kind of the old version, as I mentioned. You have the white dot between all of them, the diamond, and a silver frame around it. These, the picture didn't come out too good, but this is what a typical black is. You can see the cells right here. That's a black cell. You can see behind it, there's a black backsheet and there's a black frame. And this is kind of a variation of it where they put everything's black except the backsheet. They left it white. Is there a price difference? Not really. It's all the pricing is going to be more based on the efficiency of it, such as a Panasonic module is going to be considered a more premium module, as opposed to, if you've ever heard of Trina. Trina's almost the #1 producer of solar modules, but they are a Chinese company. They have manufacturing in about 7 different countries, so they're all over. And of course, this is another version of it. This is a Solaria panel. They're just made, or this one here is Solaria. They're made a little different, as you can see these wafers. And then this is like 120 cells, so they're half cells. So there's all kinds of varieties. Some of them are better, some are more efficient, and but they all do the same thing. They convert the sun. And then here's some reference material in case any of you are interested in anything specific. As Jim pointed out, this particular webinar is hosted by Colorado Renewable Energy Society. That's a southeastern chapter of CRES. That's their website. Mapsep.org, I mentioned. Colorado Solar and Storage Association is a statewide organization. They're also ones that do lobbying for solar. Colorado Energy Office is actually part of the governor's office. They have information there, and they actually sponsor a credit union to get financing for customers. So a resident wants to have solar, they want to get financing for it. They offer a very nice program, a loan program. SEI, or Solar Energy International, their education, they're over in Carbondale. DesireUSA.org, they basically show you all the incentives by state and at the state and federal level. They've been around a while. I haven't actually checked their website in a while. And as I mentioned, the Colorado Renewable Loan Program, as you can see, it says the URL says elevations. That's the credit union. I see you guys. The credit union for the Colorado Energy Office works with. So they give up, and they handle the loans. There were a couple of things I wanted to add to this at the end of it. One of the things, these are kind of things to watch out for. There are a lot of companies selling solar in Colorado, and a lot of them go door to door. I would, believe it or not, the majority of that 1,600 systems is actually sold door to door. They knock on someone's door and get them interested. Problem with that is that I got to point out, you're going to pay somebody commission. So your system cost is going to go up. Purchasing directly from an installer as opposed to a marketing company is going to save you a lot of money. Careful when you're getting financing. There's a lot of finance companies now in the solar area, and they actually charge a hefty fee So when you are approached, they're going to give you a large cost per watt. And part of that is the cost per watt is going to add the salesperson's commission, and it's going to add that finance fee. And it can be significant, almost 20% of the total cost. And then, I know some people are going to be interested in how much it costs. It's, if you're paying more than $3.40 a watt, you're probably paying too much. I'll just leave it at that. And I know I went quick. I went very quick, but hopefully I did cover everything. If there's any questions, we're open that now. At this point,
Phil, keep your camera and mic on. We do have a question. I will relay these to you.
okay.
What is the life of a system? And let me add a corollary to that too. If you could also talk about life of a roof and considerations for that as you deal with the life of a roof-mounted solar system.
Yeah. Okay. So a roof's going to last. A standard roof's going to last between 20 and 30 years. So if you're 15 to 20 years into that period and you're going to get solar, the solar system's going to, most of them are warranted for a minimum of 25 years, meaning that in 25 years, they'll still be producing over 80% of what they're producing today. So they're going to last longer than that. They're going to go 30, 40 years, easy. There are some roofs that have a 50-year warranty. And so keep that in mind if you have one of those better roofs. But yeah, so the system's going to last for 30 years. Your roofs are typically, the standard roof's a 20-year. And if you're 10 years into it, you're going to want to get that roof replaced because the solar is going to last long beyond that. And you don't want to have it removed. Then again, insurance typically pays for having your roof repaired. And if you do have damage and it does need to be repaired, the insurance company also takes care of what we call a remove and replace. Especially here in El Paso County, they strictly regulate that at the building department on who's removing it, who's replacing it, and the whole, when there's hail damage, it's a real, they watch it really closely. I can't emphasize that enough. So you're pretty safe usually when that happens. But yeah, so the warranty on a typical panel, 25 years. Some of panels come with 25-year or a 12-year replacement if it fails. It's basically a workmanship warranty. Some of them are 25. Some of them have warranties up to 30 years in regards to production. Some of them go 30 years for almost 85, 86%. So they'll be around a long time.
And I think the standard industry warranty for the inverters is about 15 to 18 years too, correct?
Well, yeah, it's if you're getting, the old string inverters used to be 10 to 12 years, and then they bumped it up to 15 years. There's the hybrid inverters now, which are obviously a little better. They typically come with a 12 or a 25 year. The 25 year, it will either be put in the cost or just be part of the system when it's upgraded. So you're getting 12, but you can get bump it up 25 years. Micro inverters are 25 years typically. Optimizers, because they're underneath the panels, both the microinverters and the optimizers, depending on the system, both of those are warranted for 25 years. So that you're looking for, you really want to see when you're getting a system that it's warranted front to back for 25 years.
Okay. Before we go to the next question, just on the roof issue, I'll add one other point. For those of you that are getting ready to build a house, one consideration that we had when we built ours was we opted for a metal roof, not just for fire protection, but also because I wanted a roof that would last as long as my solar panels. so that they would never have to come down in order to change the roof. Next question for you, Phil. How was panel durability, particularly hail?
That's always a big question around here. They actually, most of them come with a warranty of where they've been tested against a 1-inch piece of hail at what they call terminal velocity, which is basically the speed at which it falls, about 50, 55 miles an hour. So the glass is tempered and it will take that without too much trouble. And it all depends on how your roof is facing and which direction the storm comes in. These things, if you're in the right conditions, you can easily handle a 2-inch hail because it's going to come off and bounce off it this way. Okay, if it's coming directly this way, if it's bigger than 1 inch, it's probably going to crack it. The panels, when they're built, the cells themselves are encapsulated in a plastic. You can't see it. It basically, when they heat shrink it, it becomes invisible. So when it does crack, it doesn't cause immediate damage. You don't need to jump and replace it. But usually, again, and I haven't seen a situation where this isn't true, when you get a system, you tell your insurance company that you got solar, and then it's on your policy, and the damaged ones are covered, basically. So when you have to have the roof replaced, you're going to have panels removed anyway, and then there's just the extra charge of the panel, which they usually cover, the insurance companies.
What about maintenance? Do the panels need to be cleaned? Next question.
Not really. Mine have been up there, I don't know how long now, many years. I've never touched them. The production seems great. So yeah, what happens around here, unlike in some other areas of the country, we get enough storms, and they're usually far apart, where they're going to clean it off for you. So if it starts to get any dust on it, within a month, you're going to probably see something come through, and that'll take care of it for you. So I don't recommend anybody go up there. You really don't want to get on a roof, sloped roof, with a hose and try to wash them down. I have heard people say they get some kind of cleaner, I guess it's like Rain-X or something, where it's a coating you put on there, and that helps some of the stuff come off. But I'm not familiar with them, so I don't use them.
Okay, the next question was actually for both of us. I live in the South in Charlotte, North Carolina. Any other considerations off the top of your head we should look for first for efficiency or solar thoughts? Well, first of all, welcome. I did not know that we were going to have any out-of-state viewers tonight, but thank you very much for joining us. I don't know, Phil. From the solar perspective, do you have any other considerations on the first things to look for the solar installation that you haven't already covered?
Yeah, in that area, I think one thing people think of is hurricanes. What's going to happen when that is coming by. But most of the panels, manufacturers have already designed them for that, because the weather is pretty tough everywhere. So, as long as you're using a fairly recognizable brand on the modules, I don't see that you'll ever have a problem. I don't know, does it hail in a hurricane? I don't know. But like I mentioned, that they can handle it. I mean, there's a lot of solar out, and I do know that there's a number of companies that have been really pushing solar in North Carolina. And there's quite a bit of solar. And I don't think there's anything unusual.
And from the efficiency standpoint, we can become complacent living here in Colorado, but I did a lot of design work for folks in Washington State, a Japanese architectural firm that was doing construction for the U.S. Marines. And these areas, one thing they have in common is much higher humidity, as you would in Charlotte. And so it becomes extremely critical to understand the impacts of your air sealing, if that's the first step you're going to take, on the potential for mold and mildew, and how to mitigate it, and the proper ways to make sure that you don't fix one problem in terms of air leakage, but then create a nightmare for yourself in terms of mold and mildew. And there are plenty of home energy rating system HERS raters and Building Performance Institute analysts in the Charlotte area. And so that would be a good place to start. Again, is to get that professional audit and make sure that you're getting the tips and the pointers for how to keep your house safe at the same time that you're making it more efficient. Let me see if we had any other questions. Yes, one more. Battery storage tech. Any recommendations and cost return or return on investment? That's for you, Phil.
Yeah, batteries are still expensive. Recently, I took the time to read the actual warranty of a lead acid battery when it's used in a solar renewable energy off-grid situation. And it was interesting because they said that it should never, like remove the warranty, be drained more than 50%, which means you need to have twice as many batteries. Now, knowing that, and you're never going to get more than 8, maybe 10 years on the lead acid, that the lithium ions actually come with, some of the companies are putting out stuff with 10, 15-year guarantees. We're talking, over 5,000 cycles. So what's 365 days, or 3,650 days is 10 years. So we're talking over 10 years. So, and you're looking at also 90% depth of discharge. Some of them I recently read were at 100%. So you can discharge it 100% for over 10 years and never have, and it's still under warranty. So right now, lithium ion probably costs about twice as much as the lead acid or the AGMs, but you have to have twice as many of those, and they're not going to last as long. So I think economically, right now, lithium ion is the way to go.
Okay, so let me just ask if you have any final questions, please go ahead and type them in now. And while I'm waiting to see if we have any last questions, let me just point out for everyone to stay tuned to our Facebook page, to our SECRES website, which can also be found on the main CRES website for our upcoming lectures. We don't have definitive dates, but what we do have coming up this year, a lecture from Mr. Aram Benjamin, the CEO of Colorado Springs Utilities, to talk about the recent historic vote on moving to a renewable energy future and closing down the Martin Drake and Ray Nixon coal plants. That should be a very fascinating talk. And we also have in the plans a whole session on electric vehicles. And do we have any last minute questions?
I do have one last statement I wanted to make.
Go ahead.
You all saw Jim's presentation, and when you're going solar, in order to reduce your cost for solar and make it pay back quicker, you really want to apply all those energy efficiency little tidbits. You really want to take care of those, because if you can reduce your energy, you're going to reduce the cost of the system. And
let me say, this stuff works. We designed, when we retired, we designed and built a net zero energy house. I mean, still connected to the grid. all electric, no natural gas, 2 electric vehicles, and through energy efficiency measures and passive solar heating, we produce all of the energy for the house and both cars with 28 solar panels. So this stuff works. It's not theoretical. It's not pie in the sky. It's actually out there in the real world. With that, I would like to say thank you very much, especially to the gentleman that is listening in from Charlotte, North Carolina. I believe you get the door prize for the furthest distance listening in. And I appreciate everybody's time and look forward to seeing and hearing from you in our future lectures. And with that, have a good night.